Welcome to my channel. Subscribe, listen, and enjoy my stories every day. It was a dreary Wednesday afternoon when the doorbell rang, breaking the monotony of my work-from-home routine. I shuffled to the door, expecting the usual delivery of office supplies or perhaps another unsolicited catalog. Instead, standing on my doorstep was a courier, unfamiliar and looking somewhat uneasy, holding a small, elegantly wrapped package. "Delivery for Mrs. Harper," he said, extending the box towards me as he checked something on his handheld device. "That's my wife," I replied, taking the package. "She's not home at the moment. Can I sign for it?" "Yes, of course. Just here, please," he said, handing me the electronic pad. As I scribbled my signature, I noticed a small note attached to the box, adorned with a playful font, "From the baby." My brow furrowed in confusion. We didn't have children, nor were we expecting any. The courier, noticing my puzzled look, offered a shrug before bidding goodbye and quickly departing. Once back inside, my curiosity piqued. I turned the package over in my hands, the note's words echoing in my mind. A prank, perhaps. Or maybe a misdelivery. Regardless, something felt off. I decided to open it, justifying that it might be important. The contents of the box were as shocking as they were inexplicable: adult toys, nothing that a baby would send, obviously. My heart raced as a flush of betrayal swept over me. This had to be a mistake, a terrible, distasteful joke. Yet, as I stood there, the reality began to sink in. My wife, Jessica, had secrets wrapped in shiny paper and hidden beneath playful notes. Anger and hurt jockeyed for dominance in my chest as I devised a plan. This mockery of a marriage could not stand. If Jessica wanted to lead a double life, I would ensure it came crashing down around her. I stashed the box away just as I heard her car pull into the driveway. My mind raced through possible scenarios. Confront her now. Wait and gather more evidence. Each option spiraled into darker, more satisfying fantasies of revenge. "Hey, love. I'm home," Jessica called out, her voice echoing cheerily from the hall. Her footsteps approached, and I managed to compose my features into a semblance of normalcy as I met her in the kitchen. "Hey," I responded, my voice neutral. "You got a delivery today." I watched her face carefully, looking for any sign, any crack in her practiced smile. "Oh? What is it?" "Something from the baby," I said, the words heavy with unspoken accusation. Her eyes flickered, just for a moment, and I knew. She knew exactly what was in that box. "Oh, that," she laughed, a little too quickly. "Just a silly gag gift from my sister for my upcoming birthday. You know how she is." I nodded, pretending to be appeased, but inside, the gears were turning. I would play along, gather my evidence, and when the time was right, Jessica's world would crumble just as mine had today. The facade of our happy marriage was cracked, and I was ready to shatter it completely. After Jessica drifted off to sleep that night, I slid out of bed, a plan forming in the shadows of our room. The dim glow of the streetlights filtered through the blinds, casting long stripes across the carpet as I made my way quietly to the study. There, in the privacy of my workspace, I began the first phase of my retribution, gathering evidence. I powered up my computer and started with the phone bills, months of records that I meticulously combed through. The quiet hum of the machine was a stark contrast to the loud pounding of my heart. I knew I had to be thorough. Every call, every text message sent or received late at night while I pretended not to notice, pretending everything was normal. It wasn't long before I found what I was looking for, a recurring number, unlisted, that appeared more frequently than others, often at hours when honest people were asleep. Armed with this information, I decided to confront her directly. This confrontation would be the key to unlocking the secrets she guarded so closely. The next morning, over breakfast, I watched Jessica as she sipped her coffee, the morning light catching the edge of her cup, casting a golden glow on her face. "Jess," I began, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "I was going over our phone bills last night. Funny thing, I noticed a number that keeps popping up. Late night calls, texts. Any idea who that might be?" Her hand trembled slightly, the coffee sloshing gently against the sides of her mug. "It's probably just Linda from work. You know, project deadlines and all that." "Linda, huh?" I pushed further, watching her face for any sign of deceit. "Would you mind if I give Linda a call? Just to say hello, touch base about your projects." Jessica set her mug down, her mask of indifference slipping slightly. "That won't be necessary, Mark. Why are you being like this? It's just work." I let the silence hang between us, heavy and accusing, before changing tack. "You're right, maybe I'm just being silly." My words were casual, but my mind was racing. Today, I would follow her. See for myself who Linda really was. The day crawled by as I waited for Jessica to leave for work. As soon as she did, I grabbed my keys and followed at a safe distance. My heart was a drumbeat in my ears, fueling my resolve. She led me not to her office but to a quaint cafe downtown, the sort of place where clandestine meetings felt right at home. From the seat of my car, I watched as she met with a man, not Linda. They greeted each other not like co-workers, but lovers. The betrayal was no longer a shadow of doubt but a glaring, painful truth. I snapped photos with my phone, the digital clicks capturing the betrayal in pixels and data. This evidence was the ammunition I needed. But it wasn't enough just to catch her. I wanted to expose her deceit utterly and completely. As they laughed together, oblivious to my watchful eyes, a plan darker and more satisfying than mere confrontation began to take shape. Jessica had chosen her fate the moment she decided to deceive me, and I would be the architect of her undoing. With the images of Jessica's betrayal seared into my phone and my mind, I drove home, each mile fueling my resolve. The quiet of our house welcomed me back, a stark contrast to the storm raging within me. I needed to confront her, to see her crumble under the weight of her deceit. Yet, a part of me wanted to savor this moment, to draw out her confession and watch her facade crack bit by bit. When Jessica arrived home that evening, she was unusually cheerful, a bounce in her step that grated on my nerves. "Mark, I was thinking we could go out tonight, just the two of us. Maybe dinner and a movie." Her voice was light, hopeful, a stark contrast to the gravity of what I had witnessed. "Actually," I began, my voice steady despite the churning emotions, "I think we need to talk. It's important." Her smile faltered, a flicker of concern crossing her face. "Is everything all right?" "Let's sit down," I suggested, motioning to the living room. As we sat across from each other, the air thick with anticipation, I pulled out my phone. "I know about him, Jessica." Her eyes widened, and for a moment, she was silent. "I don't know what you're talking about, Mark. Don't lie to me." My voice rose, a crescendo of anger and betrayal. I flipped through the photos, each one a testament to her unfaithfulness, and placed the phone between us. "Explain this." She stared at the images, her composure crumbling as she realized the extent of what I knew. Tears welled up in her eyes, but I felt no sympathy, only a cold satisfaction. "It's not what it looks like, Mark. Please, let me explain. I watched you, Jessica. I saw you with him. How long has this been going on?" My questions were sharp, cutting through the feeble defenses she tried to muster. "It was a mistake," she whispered, her voice breaking. "It never meant anything. I was confused, lonely. You've been so distant." Her excuses fueled my anger further. "Distant? So, your solution was to betray me?" I stood up, pacing back and forth as the weight of her betrayal pressed down on me. "You've ruined everything, Jessica." "I'm sorry, Mark. I truly am. Can we please try to work this out?" Her plea was desperate, clawing for any remnants of compassion I might have had. But it was too late for apologies. "I want a divorce, Jessica. I can't trust you anymore." My words were final, severing whatever bonds we had left with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel. She sobbed, her body shaking with the force of her cries, but I felt detached, removed from the woman I once loved. "You should stay somewhere else tonight," I added, my voice cold. As Jessica packed a bag, her movements sluggish with shock and sorrow, I felt a bitter victory. I had exposed her deceit, but the taste of revenge was as harsh as it was satisfying. Tomorrow, I would contact a lawyer, but tonight, I reveled in the righteousness of my cause. She had crossed a line, and I had been the hand of justice to strike back. As the door closed behind her, the silence of the house enveloped me. I was alone, truly alone, but I felt a strange sense of peace. The storm had passed, and in its wake, I was left to rebuild from the ruins of a love betrayed. The next few weeks were a blur of cold, calculated moves. I contacted the best divorce lawyer in town, laying out the evidence of Jessica's betrayal with surgical precision. My lawyer was a pit bull, drawing up papers that stripped her of any undue advantages. "This is going to be a clean cut, Mark. You're well within your rights to push hard," he assured me, his voice a gravelly echo of my own relentless desire for retribution. As the divorce proceedings kicked into gear, I set about the second part of my plan. I wasn't content with just legal victories, I wanted to dismantle the life Jessica thought she could secretly build behind my back. I started with her lover, the man from the photographs. It didn't take long to dig into his life, find the cracks in his seemingly pristine world. He owned a small business, one that teetered on the edge of failure. A few anonymous tips to certain regulatory bodies were all it took to push it over the edge. Watching from afar, I felt a grim satisfaction as his world crumbled under the weight of fines and inspections. Jessica tried to reach out, her messages a mix of pleading and anger, but I blocked her number, severing the last lines of communication. She was dead to me, and I had no interest in her apologies or rants. My focus was singular: punishment and revenge. The final hearing of our divorce was a spectacle. Jessica, worn and diminished, her eyes hollow from nights of crying, sat across the courtroom. She glanced at me, perhaps hoping for a sign of the man she once knew, but I offered her nothing but a steely gaze. When the judge hammered the final decree, solidifying my victory with the sound of gavel on wood, I felt the last thread of connection between us sever. But the real surprise was yet to come. After the hearing, as Jessica stood outside on the courthouse steps, her brother approached me. His face was somber, his eyes hard. "You didn't know, did you?" he asked in a low tone. "Know what?" I replied, my voice guarded. "Jessica was protecting you. From her own mistakes, yes, but also from something else." He paused, searching my face for signs of understanding. "The man she was with, he's connected, dangerous. She found out too late. She was trying to steer him away from you, to protect you." The revelation hit like a physical blow. The narrative I had constructed, the villain I had condemned, had I been wrong? But my heart had hardened too much by then, the seeds of vengeance had sprouted too deep. "That doesn't change what she did," I said finally, my voice void of the warmth it once held for the family I thought I knew. Her brother shook his head, a mixture of pity and disdain in his eyes. "You think you're the hero here, Mark. Maybe one day you'll see that's not quite true." As he walked away, I stood there, the weight of his words settling over me. But the taste of revenge was too strong, too consuming to let me contemplate his implications deeply. Years later, as I sit in my new home, miles and lives away from the man I was, I sometimes wonder about the truth of her brother's words. The loneliness is a constant echo, a reminder of the cost of my vengeance. Jessica never tried to contact me again, and I never sought her out to uncover the truth. In my ruthless quest for retribution, I had lost a part of myself too. The echo of betrayal, the specter of vengeance, had faded, leaving behind a stark emptiness. In destroying her, I had forged my own desolate victory, a life built on the ruins of what could have been forgiveness, understanding, maybe even redemption. But those paths were closed to me now, sealed by the harshness of my own actions. The hero and the villain, it seemed, were not so easily defined.